Lines and Dashers, welcome to Mock Draft Mondays. So, from today until the last Thursday in April, which is the day one of the NFL draft, I will be posting these videos. Now, these videos could be one round, it could be two. It honestly depends on how I feel and what I want to give y'all. I'll probably go do at least one 2 round mock draft, but for the majority of them, it will be one. Now, at least in this video, the Lamar Jackson and Aaron Rodgers trades have not happened yet. And we could see two star quarterbacks be traded on draft night. But for the sake of this video, I will not be doing any of those trades or predicting any of those trades due to the fact that there's a lot of skepticism going around with Lamar Jackson and his contract, and then what teams actually want him or not, because we've heard reports that the Falcons, the Lions, and like the Colts would want him, and then they come out on like the pro day and at the combine saying that, you know what, no, not really. So not entirely sure what's going on there. And then with Aaron Rodgers, I've heard so many rumors or so many different trade values or trade scenarios, meaning I've heard reports saying that Rodgers would only be worth a second round pick, and then I've heard reports that Rodgers would get a Stafford type of trade, meaning like 2 first round picks, multiple seconds, and fourths and fifths, and so on. Right. So not entirely sure on this information. So for this video's sake, we will not be predicting those trades. And let's get into the mock draft. Alrighty, we've entered the draft. So by the way, if I sound a bit weird or I sound like I'm losing my voice, my throat has been killing me all weekend. This is the first day I felt kind of decent to do a video, so I apologize. And there may be a lot of breaks here and there, but we'll get right into it. So the Panthers, this is an obvious pick here. CJ Stroud. Obviously, y'all have heard pretty much everything about CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud and Bryce Young are the two QB1s in this draft class. It could really go either way. I don't think you could go wrong here. Now, why I think CJ Stroud has the edge over Bryce Young for the first overall pick. Frank Wright, the new head coach, has loved getting tall QBs, with Bryce Young being small at 5'10 and then CJ Stroud being 6'3 and 214. You can't ignore the huge size difference there. And also, Josh McCown has been filmed saying that we'll find you a basketball court in Carolina. And then on top of that, the Panthers sent 12 scouts to Ohio State's pro day compared to one for Alabama. So it's kind of clear. People say there may be a smokescreen for that. I really don't think so. And they're saying that they maybe want to trade out. I'm going to be honest with you. The Panthers haven't had a QB1 since Cam Newton in 2015. I think they're going to not take the chance to let CJ Stroud fall here or pass him up on him, and I think they'll take him here at the first overall pick. And then for second overall pick, this is pretty easy as well. The Texans are just gonna pick whoever the Panthers don't pick. As I said before, Bryce Young and CJ Stroud are excellent quarterbacks here to take one or two. I don't really think it matters. So they need a quarterback of the future. Davis Mills has not been the guy that we thought may have been a steal 2 years ago in the third round. So they're going to take Bryce Young here. And then the Cardinals are up. Now, this is the first trade I'm going to predict here. I think the Bears or the Raiders we could see trade up, mainly due to the fact that they need help. Now, I think in this situation, I did this in my Cardinals video. If y'all haven't seen that yet, go and watch that. I posted that today as well. I think the Cardinals will trade with the Bears here, mainly due to the fact that the Bears are going to be willing to give up a bunch of draft capital to get Will Anderson Jr. Now, obviously, they're not in the same, same division. But here's the thing: this point, the Cardinals' main focus should be to get as much draft capital as possible. And so the Bears are going to be the ones that give them the most draft capital for that. Now, I think this one was a perfect move for the Bears because they do need help with that team. They're gonna get a star talent here in Will Anderson Jr. here, who's put up tremendous stats. I mean, look at those grades, especially in the hardest conference in football. That is hell of a move. And I mean, look at that. 14 and 15 sacks in a sophomore and junior year. That's insane. You can't ignore on a generational pass rusher in Will Anderson Jr. Alrighty, and the Colts are on the clock. There's a lot of ways or a lot of things that could go here. There's been, I don't know if y'all have seen, But Will Levi has been, or Will Levis, I apologize, has been falling off on draft boards. And that's mainly due to the fact that a lot of these scouts and a lot of these experts believe that he's too firm. He's too body built, which is kind of weird and interesting. But there was a point brought up that with his being too firm, he's not being able to be agile and throwing the ball, which kind of makes sense because, I mean, the last ripped quarterback we really had was Cam Newton, and that dude could not throw fucking football to save his life in the later years of his career. Now, we could see them go Anthony Richardson here, but I think they may wait to get like a Hendon Hooker in the second round, and especially since they have the fourth overall pick, they could be the first one to get one of the best defensive players here left in this draft after Will Anderson Jr. We could see them go cornerback here after they did trade Stephon Gilmore, but that's something they could wait on. They did lose Yannick Ngakoue in free agency. Well, they haven't lost him yet. At this point in time, Yannick Ngakoue has not been signed yet, but they do need some edge help, and I think they'll go with Tyree Wilson here. Now, for the Seattle Seahawks. Now, they have not had a problem with drafting people with character behaviors, such as Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, and Michael Bennett. Now, obviously, those guys were on the Legion of Boom, and they've done an amazing job. So I'm going to be honest with you here. I think they go with Jalen Carter here. People think he's going to fall out of the top 10. I highly doubt it. This guy is generationally good. I mean, look at those stats. Look at those grades. He's amazing. This dude is spectacular, and especially at 6'3" and 315. The fact that he's fallen this far already when he used to be a projected first overall pick, I really don't think Seattle's going to pass up on that. I think they'll take Jalen Carter here. Now, with the sixth overall pick, this is where it gets really interesting because the Lions could take two different roads here. They could go take a quarterback in Richardson or Will Levis, right? Or for their future. Or they could kind of go win now or win sooner. Because if I'm going to be honest with you, these two guys are more than likely going to be projects, right? But the Lions here are kind of ready to take the division now. Now, here's the thing. The Vikings lost so many of their players last year in the offseason, I think they fall. Even with Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook still on the team, they still lost a lot of guys, and I think they'll fall to the second or third seed. And then the Bears, now they've done some work in the offseason, but I don't think they're there yet. And I think the Lions will be the first one in the division. If they want to make a run, I think they need to go with a cornerback here, have somebody to pretty much be the cornerback one of the future, because Jeff Okudah was not that guy that they took third overall a few years ago. Now, they did sign a bunch of cornerbacks. Slot slash safety Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and then a 1-year deal to Emmanuel Mosley, and then a 3-year deal to Cameron Sutton. Now, Cameron Sutton's the only guy that's going to be there for multiple seasons. And so when you have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Emmanuel Mosley, two of the top DBs in the league, or not top DBs, more than they're kind of mid stars, I guess. Wrong terminology, but having those two experienced guys who know how to play, have like Devin Witherspoon or Christian Gonzalez thrown behind them is going to be good. And I think here, I think they go with Christian Gonzalez here due to his size and ability. And he has great coverage grade, and he's big at 6'1" and 200 pounds, has great 40-yard dash, great vertical, and a great broad jump here. Arguably, him and Devin Witherspoon are going to be battling it for the cornerback one spot in this draft, and I think it'll be Christian Gonzalez. Now, the Raiders are on the clock. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo, he's on a 3-year deal, but that's really only 2 due to his contract situation. Now, here's how the contract is built up. But but again, I don't think the Raiders want to put Jimmy Garoppolo in the same situation that they did in San Francisco, because that was kind of a shit way the 49ers kind of shitty the way the 49ers did him there. Now, with Christian Gonzalez being taken off the board, I think they go with defense again, and they've had defensive problems galore for years. I think Josh McDaniels, their head coach, tries to get their cornerback of the future in Devin Witherspoon. Now, the Atlanta Falcons are on the clock. So I already know who I'm going with here. After they traded Calvin Ridley for a couple or a second round pick and then a few others, they need help at wide receiver. Drake London seems to be a decent guy, but he's going to take a bit to get acclimated to the NFL, maybe a little bit slower than we thought. So I think they're going to go two wide receiver ones back to back drafts to help build Desmond Ryder some weapons here. And then with Kyle Pitts kind of having a horrible year last year, they need some weapons. And I'm going to take Quentin Johnson. Uh, Technical difficulties. There we go. Now the Cardinals are back on the clock here. Man, they could go so many routes here because I mean they're not going to take a quarterback, but they could go wide receiver because at this point in time, more than likely DeAndre Hopkins will be traded probably for a second or third round pick. They could go with a young wide receiver, but I don't think they will due to the fact that they kind of already have two small wide receivers in Rondale Moore and Marquise Brown, and getting another one, that's not going to really. I don't think that's really going to help them, to be honest with you. But what they do need is some offensive line help. So this one's kind of controversial. They could go Cansey here, but I think it's a bit too high. So I think I'm going to go with the tackle Peter Skrnowski to help protect Kyler Murray, especially after he tore his ACL. Now the Eagles are on the clock here. Um, man. This is a tough one. This is a tough one mainly due to the fact that we just probably took the guy that they probably wanted, because they haven't really had a true left tackle for a while. Now the offensive line is great, but you look, Mark Jason Peters has kind of been out of there for a while, and they haven't had a true left tackle because the guy that they did have there has been kind of playing guard slash tackle, which is great to have flexibility along that line. But Lane Johnson, the right tackle, is probably going to be done in a couple years here, and Jason Kelsey is probably going to be done after this year as well. Now, they drafted Jason Kelsey's replacement in the previous draft, but they will need to get somebody to replace Lane Johnson or take up the left tackle position. So this may be a reach here, but I'm going to go with Paris Johnson Jr. here for the Eagles. Alrighty, and the Titans are on the clock here. I think this is a pretty obvious pick of who they'll go with here, mainly due to the fact that outside of Traylon Burks, they got no receivers. They need some weapons around there, and especially with the two top tackles already being taken in this draft, I think they're going to try and help Malik Willis or whoever their quarterback is. It could be Ryan Tannehill. I don't know. QB situation there is fucked too, but I think they'll take one of the top wide receivers in this class, have some speed outside of Traylon Burks, and get Jackson Smith Njava. Alrighty, and the Texans are on the clock. So this also team can just pretty much take whoever is left of what's best available here. And there's not a whole lot of guys I see them taking here. Now, I took Jackson Smith Njaba, who a lot of people have going to the Texans here. Now, I mean, I kind of see it, but the way this draft is falling for me, I think they're going to go with Cansey here. They do need some defensive line help, and they can start by getting who everybody thinks is going to be the next Aaron Donald, because I mean he is undersized, the undersized tackle who's performed very similarly to Aaron Donald years ago. Now, see, obviously he has comps, so he's a first round pick. He's this second, arguably first defensive lineman taken off this board, and I don't think the Texans will let potentially a generational talent fall. All right, and the Jets are on the clock. So I think no matter what here, I think no matter what, they're going to reach and get an offensive tackle here due to the fact that they're going to have Aaron Rodgers, and they got to protect Aaron Rodgers. And Dwayne Brown, the old head right tackle that they had, is not going to be there anymore. So why don't you draft a guy at the 13th spot to help to protect Aaron Rodgers? And they also, their left tackle also tore his ACL this last year, so this guy may play both tackles. We shall see. But I think right here they'll go with Broderick Jones. He has great size, great. He's very polished compared to his teammate. It's Juwan Jones, I think. Yes, or no, not Juwan Jones. I really messed up. I apologize. They're not teammates. It's Paris Johnson and Juwan Jones that are teammates. I apologize, but he's very polished, pretty good, and I mean, I think they go with him here. Now, the Patriots are on the clock. I don't understand why they need a QB. They drafted Mac Jones. I, I don't really understand. I don't really understand, to be honest with you. I really don't. But here's the thing. I think they go with Lucas Van Ness here. Outside of Matthew Judon, they don't really have some great pass rushing. Now that defense has always been good under Bill Belichick for years, but outside of Judon, they need some help. I think they go with Lucas Van Ness here. Packers are on the clock now. Obviously, I am a fan of them, so this may be a little biased, but I think they're gonna go with their first offensive pick in, I think it's like 17 years, offensive weapon pick. Now they've taken some offensive linemen, but they haven't taken a skill position in the first round in a while. And I think they're gonna go with Michael Meyer here. Now, obviously, Kincaid has been rising up in some of these drafts due to his pure size and athletic ability, but the Packers are probably going to lose Mercedes Lewis in free agency this year. And for those of you who do not know, Mercedes Lewis was the big tight end at like 6'7" and like 270. That was a blocking tight end. He didn't do much in the passing game. He wasn't very flashy, but he helped the Packers run game that has been pretty good for the last few years under Matt LaFleur flourish. Now, he is way better compared to Kincaid. He has way better run blocking grade. I mean, great receiving grade, way better blocking run grade. He's 6'4" and 249. This guy is very good. Screams a Packer, a future Packer, and the Packers have missed on tight ends for years. I think they take a risk here and try and get one of the premium ones in the first round. I think they go with Michael Mayer here. Alrighty, and the Commanders are on the clock. So there's multiple routes they could go here. Gonna be honest with you. A lot of they're stuck in a weird situation because they did draft Sam Howell last year, who will probably start. But with these two guys falling, we could potentially see them. But in where they are right now, safety, they honestly they don't really need cornerback or defensive backs right now, and they already have Logan Thomas, so they could let him fall here. They don't really necessarily need a defensive lineman when they have Jonathan Allen, and then they just paid Darren Payne. Now their edges as well, they don't really necessarily need either. So we could see them go with tackle here just to kind of build that offensive line. I know they're kind of stuck in a weird spot. So I'm gonna go with Anton Harrison to help build that offensive line to help Sam Howell and that offense flourish. Now, with the Steelers, this one is also pretty interesting due to the fact that all the tackles have been pretty much taken, and that's their biggest position of need. Now we could see them reach and go get another offensive tackle, but I'm kind of leaning towards giving them Joey Porter Jr. mainly because they did lose Cameron Sutton, and yes, they did sign Patrick Peterson. Patrick Peterson will be, I think, 34 years old this year. And on a 1 year deal and a 34-year-old, you can't rely on him to be your cornerback of the future. Now, the Steelers' defense has always been good, especially that front seven, but we'll take them over the top. Seriously, there we go. Is a cornerback who has the physical attributes, 6'2", 200 pounds, could potentially be a project, but also could potentially be a very, very good cornerback. So I think they go with Joey Porter here. Why am I having these issues? There we go. Now, the Lions are on the clock at 18 with their second pick. There's so many options that they could go here. Now, I originally had them picking Christian Gonzalez. I think they could potentially go defense again. It's either going to be between Brian Brees, Nolan Smith, and Miles Murphy to help out Aiden Hutchinson on that defensive line. Because a lot of the times, as we've seen in previous Super Bowls, we've seen teams make it without having that great of a secondary. Now, the front seven can cover up the secondary's problems because if you have an elite pass rush, an elite run stopping game, they're going to be forced to pass the ball, and you can help them out in that passing game. So, building a front seven is very key to really any defense. And so, it really all depends on whether they want some pass rush or they want some run stopping. Because for the majority of the year, the Lions could not stop the run game to save their life until pretty much the last 4 games of the season. Now, the real question is, do they want to go with speed or do they want to go with stopping the run? And I'm going to be honest with you, I think they go with Brian Brees here to help stop the run because they already drafted a dynamic pass rusher in Hudson. Wanted to give him some balance and get Brian Brees in the first round. Now, the Buccaneers are on the clock. This one's pretty easy to take with Anthony Richardson falling. And Will Levis falling. I think they take Anthony Richardson here. Baker Mayfield's only on a 1 year deal, and then their backup quarterback Kyle Trask has not shown any promise. So I don't think they pass up on a QB here, especially since Tom Brady retired and they don't have a QB of the future. They take one here in Anthony Richardson. Now the Seahawks are on the clock here. Um, Again, they could go multiple routes here, but with them taking Jalen Carter, and they did sign a bunch of defensive ends this year, but they were all on 1 year deals, like in Jaron Reed and DeForest. I forgot his name. They signed a bunch of defensive ends, but they're like to 1 year deals, and they need to get some guys, and especially with Nolan Smith and Miles Murphy here, I think they cannot pass up the opportunity to get these guys. Now, here's the thing. Who do I want to go with here? Because they could go with a speedy guy in Nolan Smith, and they haven't had really a speed pass rusher ever. Now, Miles Murphy is more of their style, especially in Pete Carroll's defense. So I think I'll go with Miles Murphy here. Now, obviously, the Dolphins forfeited their pick due to trying to tamper with Tom Brady to get him to come over. Um, so Chargers are on the clock. I've seen multiple mock drafts having the Chargers take Bijan Robinson. But I don't think so. Mainly due to the fact that Austin Eckler, I highly doubt anybody is going to give the Chargers the value that they want to give up for Austin Eckler, because I believe the Chargers will probably will try and pull a third, maybe even a second round pick from a team. And Austin Eckler is turning 27 or 28 years old this year, and that's most of the time when running backs start falling off. And that's a huge risk for some of these teams. And I don't think they're willing to give up that. So I think Austin Eckler stays with the Chargers here, because I mean he flourishes in that offense so very well. I highly doubt that he falls. Now, we could see them go two ways here. Now they do have Derwin James, but we could see them double up on safety, especially after all the injuries last year to that secondary. We could see them go cornerback here again with the injuries to that secondary. They don't need pass rush. They have Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. They could go defensive lineman, but really all the defensive linemen have been taken. So honestly, I think the perfect scenario here is getting Dalton Kincaid, adding another weapon to this roster, because they did lose Hunter Henry 2 years ago, and even though the Chargers didn't really have didn't really skip a beat without him, you can never give enough weapons to Justin Herbert, and especially in a loaded AFC West. And I'm going to take Dalton Kincaid. Alrighty, and the Ravens are on the clock. This one's pretty easy pick. Deontay Banks is really the last top cornerback available. And with Marcus Peters pretty much not being on the team anymore, and they had injuries in that secondary as well, I think they'll take the just best cornerback available here in Deontay Banks. Now, the Vikings, they need help on all defensive sides of the ball. And even though they have Harrison Smith, that dude is going to be 35 this year. 35. And really, I mean, they could go Nolan Smith here. It really just depends on if they want to hold up this pass, if they want to get a great pass rush, or pretty much get their secondary of the future. And now I was kind of leaning towards Brian Branch, but I think I may take Nolan Smith, because they did lose to Darius Smith this year, and Daniel Hunter has been very inconsistent, mainly due to his injuries. I think they're going to not pass up on a speedy pass rusher in Nolan Smith. Alrighty, and the Jaguars are on the clock. This one's very interesting one, because they don't really need a whole bunch of these guys here that are left. They could go tackle here because they did lose Jawan Taylor, but Dewan Jones, I feel like, is a reach at this point. But they do need to help build that defense, especially in that loaded AFC conference. And that's a position of need. I mean, can you name a safety on the Jaguars? They have Tyson Campbell, they have Darius Williams, but all those guys are at cornerback. They do need a safety of the future. This one's a controversial pairing here, but I'm going to go with Brian Branch. Now, the Giants are kind of stuck in no man's land, because they could go wide receiver here to help fill out Daniel Jones, but they don't need a running back. They don't need edge rushers, and any other wide receiver beyond these two are reaches. So I know I kind of just told you what I'm going to pick. I'm going to go with wide receiver here. Now, I'm trying to decide, do they want somebody speedy, do they want somebody speedy, or do they want somebody that's kind of more elusive? Because, I mean, obviously the size difference is not too big, but they both play very two different styles of football. And gotta be honest with you here. I think they're gonna take speed because I mean a lot of people have been trying to emulate Tyreek Hill or draft people that emulate Tyreek Hill, and I think the Giants will do that as well, especially handing a buttload of money to Daniel Jones for no reason. They traded for Darren Waller for a third round pick. They're obviously wanting to build around Daniel Jones. Still don't understand that. Never have. Probably never will. I think they go with Zay Flowers here. Alrighty, and the Cowboys are on the clock. Now, that defense was pretty good last year, but it can get a bit better. And especially with the additions of Stephon Gilmore and Brandon Cooks, I don't think they're going to take necessarily any path on maybe getting a secondary guy or even a wide receiver. Because even though they did lose Dalton Schultz, if Kincaid falls here, I think they will take I think the Cowboys will take him. But in this scenario, he did not. And I don't be honest with you. I don't think they're going to draft a wide receiver due to the fact that they already have CD Lamb, now Brandon Cooks, and then they're going to have Michael Gallup, who they're already paying big bucks for. So I don't see why they take another receiving option here. And then with Bijan Robinson, people are having him go into the Cowboys. I don't believe so, mainly due to the fact that I think Tony Pollard is going to get a deal done here, and especially when it comes to football, defense wins championships. I think they're going to take that mentality here. Even though the Cowboys are kind of more flashy, I think they are starting to realize that you know what they need to take a win, all in perspective and get a win now guy. Mazzy Smith could be that guy to help that defensive interior, especially with that run game, and I think they take him here. Now, this is where I believe the Bills will take a running back in Bijan Robinson because they lost Devin Singletary to the Houston Texans. Weirdly enough, when they drafted that guy, I mean they were expecting to have a top running back, and they ended up not. Now they do have Nynum Hines, who is not a running back one at all, and they didn't sign anybody in free agency. Now they can get their number one cornerback here, or cornerback number one running back here at the 27 spot. Absolute steal. Now I do believe that he's probably going to be a lot more of a dual running back threat in this situation. But I really believe that if the Bills want to win, they're going to need to pound the ball with him because their biggest issue has been Josh Allen turnovers, which mainly happens in the later games of the season because they're just throwing the ball so much. So if they're able to utilize Bijan Robinson very well, they could finally get to the Super Bowl. So I'll have them taking Bijan Robinson. Now the Bengals are on the clock here. I think this one is pretty. Um. Ooh. Now this one's actually kind of tricky, and it mainly has to do with the fact that they don't need a wide receiver. They already have three. They could go edge rusher here. They could also go tackle here. I don't think they'll go tackle here due to the fact that even though this guy Dewan Jones is massive and pretty much a sexy pick due to his size and ability, they just signed Orlando Brown and Jonah Williams. They're going to trade, but they still have Lyle Collins. And even though he did tear his knee like to fucking bits, I think they gave him a good amount of money, and I don't think they're going to want to replace him already. I think they go with defense to help out that loaded AFC conference. I think they'll go with either the edge position to help with the pass rush, or I think they'll go with a cornerback Emmanuel Forbes. Now I'm gonna kind of lead towards getting this cornerback here due to his size. He is 6'1" and 166. Even though he is small, he kind of emulates the body of Sauce Gardner in a way. I'm not saying he's gonna be. Sauce Gardner's already the number one cornerback in the league, but that secondary has always needed help, and especially with losing Jesse Bates and Von Bell in the offseason, I think they'll go with cornerback. Alrighty, and the Saints are on the clock. I think this one's pretty easy. They need an edge rusher, especially after Marcus Davenport left them in free agency. Now he didn't do much, to be honest, with the Saints. He was kind of a big letdown because they traded up for him in the draft years ago, and Will McDonald is pretty much the last, pretty much first round eligible edge rusher here. And with signing Derek Carr, and they already have weapons really on that offense, so kind of investing in that defense a bit more will help, especially in a young guy who, and Cam Jordan is getting older. He's going to be able to learn from behind a Hall of Famer, but also potentially take his reign. We're taking Will McDonald. Alrighty, and the Eagles are on the clock. So we in our 10th pick, we already invested in that offensive line for the future in Paris Johnson Jr. But luckily for them, these two wide receivers have fallen down the board, and especially in Jordan Addison. Now here's the thing: they invested a lot into that defense last year, and unfortunately, they even though they did make it to the Super Bowl, they just fell short. So we could see them take an alternate net route to where they just go full offense. Helping out Jalen Hurts will be tremendous, and especially since he's probably going to get a big contract coming up here soon, they probably want to invest in some young, cheap wide receiver talent because Devontae Smith is probably going to be up for a contract extension in a few years, and so same thing with Dallas Goddard. So investing in that offense is key, especially with Jalen Hurts proving that he could be a starting quarterback and potentially one of the best in the NFL. I don't think they let Jordan Patterson go down to, especially the Chiefs. So this is a win-win situation for the Eagles. They take Jordan Addison. Now, the Chiefs are on the clock. Now, I think here they could go multiple routes because with them having the last pick, they could either go Josh Downs to help out with wide receiver, especially after they lost Juju Smith-Schuster. They could go edge rusher because that defense needs pretty much help everywhere, or they could go offensive lineman with Dewan Jones. Even though they just signed Dewan Taylor, we could see him go to the right tackle position. They could go get guard as well to put in that at the right guard. We could see them take many routes here, many routes. But I think with the loss of Juju Smith Schuster and them not really replacing him, all they have left at the wide receiver position is Marquez Valdez Scantling and then Sky Moore. Um, to be honest, I don't think those guys are ready to be wide receiver ones. And you have Patrick Mahomes at the reign. You got to invest in some wide receivers, get him some guys. Now, they could trade for DeAndre Hopkins. I think that's a super long shot. I don't think the Cardinals would do that to the league. So I think they just take the best wide receiver available. And I mean, this guy's pretty good. For those of you who do not know, he's even though he's short, he has great receiving grades, great man coverage grades. This guy's pretty good. I think they'll go with wide receiver here. And that is it for the draft, guys. Let me know what y'all think, how I did down below. What would you grade this draft on a letter scale? Or tell me what you do differently for your team. I'll see y'all later. Peace.